Welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about the myth of celibacy. There's a lot of Kundalini lineages and Kriya lineages that will stress over and over again that you have to be celibate in order to raise your Kundalini. And I just want to explode that myth through the works of Lahiri Mashai and explain specifically for Kriya Yoga anyway, that is not the case. So let's go to him. Let's go to Lahiri Mashai, see what he has to say, put it in some context. So let's get into it. So first of all, it's very well known that Lahiri Mashai encouraged his students to be householders, that he wanted them to have a job and he wanted them to be married and live a normal life, keep their own customs, and then find a section of their day where they would have some time to practice some Kriya Yoga. And in fact, he was so adamant about this that there are some stories that he would not take a student until that student got a job. And that's the case with Panchanan Bhattacharya. You can go to the Araya Mission website if it's up. I haven't seen it up lately, but you can read the more hardline story about that Lahiri said no, that Panchanan came to him and said, will you teach me Kriya? And Lahiri said, I would be happy to, but first you have to renounce your renunciation, go get a job, come back to me, and then I will initiate you. Now, in other places, that story has been softened, and they say that Panchanan was so in tune with his guru that he renounced his renunciation and he picked up a job as a flower vendor because he wanted to be in tune with his guru. So I wasn't there, I can't tell you, but that story persists, and I've heard it from other Kriya lineages. I've heard it, a story about Tinkuri, that a well-known yogi came to him and asked for Kriya, and he told him, no, you have to go and get a job first. That's how serious Lahiri Mashai was about this. He really, really thought it was very important. Next, let's go to Purana Purusha, which is a wonderful book written by Ashok Chatterjee. And in that book, he mentions that Lahiri Mashai asked his students to be intimate with their family, with their wife, every 2.5 weeks. Now, I'm sure it wasn't a timed affair. I hope it wasn't a timed affair. But he wanted to give them a reference, an idea. What should I do? Because this question will come up with yogis. How often should I be intimate with my spouse or my husband? And that was his recommendation, every 2.5 weeks. And the reason that he gave them, he was very straightforward and honest about this. If you keep going past that time longer and longer, it will begin to warp the mind, and the mind will begin to become perverted. And so this is a real worry for me when I see yogis spouting celibacy. I'm always wondering down the line, when will there be a scandal? When will we see it? Because that's going to happen every single time. So long as you are still in a body, then you will spend part of your time associated with a body. And the body has needs. And that's why the Brahman ideal of having a family and pursuing a shamanistic life, pursuing a meditative life, that within that family unit, that's why we have that standard. That's why that was the original recommendation, that you pursue your shamanistic desires along with your household desires, that you put them together so that one feeds the other, that the success with your business and your family fuels your desire to go deeper in meditation. one helps the other. It's a beautiful life. It's a really wonderful formula. And that's, Lahiri Mashai was adamant about that. So let's go to Banmali Lahiri, the great grandson of Lahiri. This is from banmalilahiri.org. It's a wonderful website. I hope you'll read the whole thing. And this is what he has to say about his great grandfather, Lahiri Mashai, talking about celibacy. The prime importance of celibacy and the antagonistic effect of sex on spiritual practice and attainment. To this end, he recommended marriage and the family as the best environment for spiritual practice because not only could one free oneself of sexual experience by producing children, it would also free one from our ancestral debt of having been brought up without an expectation of reward. It would also be superior to the monks or ascetics or sadhus' apparent conquest over sex by shunning it, as it was superior to avoid sex with the constant possibility of having it than to lock oneself out of sex, which he used to explain is like the pressing down of a spring. So there you have it. A spring pressed down will always, always, always bounce back twice as hard. So that's Banmali Lahiri remembering his great-grandfather. The Kundalini model has this idea that we have to have this huge rush of energy come up the spine and go all over the place, and that is going to force us up into the brain. And there's a little bit of truth to that it can happen that way. But what I'm teaching, what is a possibility? I have students doing this, actually going into absorption, going into samadhi. I'm so amazed and happy for them. It's not necessary. You don't need this huge thing of energy all the time. In fact, the idea of energy will lock you away in the body, because so long as you're feeling that rush of energy, you are still attached to the body. What you really need is to disengage and float up into the brain. I call it the roll up. It's just moving back towards the brain, toward the roots of our being, which is in the brain. And then we see and behold the spiritual eye without the breath and without the hindrance of the body in a deep freeze response. So that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for the tranquil breath. We're looking for a deep freeze response. We're looking for a little bit of the vision of the spiritual eye just because it shows us where to look. That's really it. And so this big rush of energy, it's not necessary. And for somebody to tell you that it is necessary is kind of cruel, because you're going to hunt for the wrong experience. They're going to send you down a path which is not necessary. What has to happen is you have to be conscious of what's going on inside. But if you can feel the four proofs, that's conscious enough. As one of my students wrote to me, he said, it's like a whole new world has opened up inside of me. And that's enough interior vision to have the rest of the experience. So this rushing Kundalini type experience is not necessary. In fact, it may get in the way, and it may cause you problems during your daily life. What we really need is the freeze response, the tranquil breath, and the practice of Om Japa in the chakras, so that we can enter into a very low idle state, so we get the body out of the way. That's all that's necessary. One thing that Lahiri mentions in Purana Purusha is that during the embrace of the lovers, the yogi may lift his tongue up in Khechari, so that during the rush of energy, some of that energy actually goes into the brain. It's a beautiful way to spiritualize your connection with your loved one. Because so long as we're in a body, we're going to crave the embrace of another. When you step out of that in samadhi, it's another deal, right? That's a union of a different kind, a much higher level. But as we come back to our human consciousness in the left brain, we're still going to crave that kind of embrace. It's just natural. And the real benefit of celibacy peaks at about 3 weeks. And you can experiment with that. It's going to give you more energy, right? But how much energy do you actually need? Well, it's going to peak at about 3 weeks. And so I invite you to experiment with that and see if you get any added benefit after 3 weeks, because I don't see it. 3 weeks is the peak, and from there, it just kind of plateaus. So there's some deep thoughts for you and some direction from Lahiri Mashai. I hope this busts up some of the celibacy myths. I see a lot of people struggling with it. If somebody chooses celibacy, well, wonderful. I'm not here to correct anybody. But for those who are struggling with it and want direction from a yogic master, which is Lahiri Mashai, that is his direction. He's telling you it's a mistake. So don't take my word for it, take his. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you.